Who are the sons of God in Genesis chapter 6? I saw a lot of you asking that question on the video of Spirit Spouse and other videos. And I know that Genesis chapter 6, the sons of God, a view and the scripture is very difficult, as well as it's very controversial. There's different views on that, and so I am not in any way a Bible scholar, but I'm gonna dive in and also reference few books or few blogs that I got some of this information that I'm gonna share with you. This is not necessarily my personal revelation. There's so many people that had this insight way before me, and I learned and gleaned from them. So I'm gonna right away make that disclaimer from the beginning. Okay, this is not Vlad's view or Vlad's discovery. Let's dive into those verses in Genesis chapter 6, verse 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Now it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth. I want you to notice that it talks about men from the beginning. It's important to notice that men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and took wives for them of all whom they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants on the earth in those days. So I want you to see how it's connecting. The flesh, the sons of God. There were giants on the earth in those days. And also afterwards, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Now there's really two main views on who are the sons of God. The first view, it's a common one called the Sethite view. Pretty much says that the descendants of Seth were the sons of God. You know, Seth took over, pretty much for his brother, who was the godly one, Abel. He was killed by Cain, and then God, started to kind of work through the Seth's lineage, and then these descendants of Seth, mainly, I guess, males, they started to interact with the women from the Cain's lineage and started to have sex, and then because of that, these offsprings were born to them. The second view is that the sons of God are not human, but they are divine beings who, when crossed our boundary set by God and started to have sexual relationships with women. I'm going to share with you why I'm leaning more toward the second view. The first reason is that sons of God in the Old Testament refers to spirit beings. This is not the only time where the word sons of God is mentioned. We see it also used 3 times in Job. Job chapter 1 verse 6, Job chapter 2 verse 1, and Job chapter 38 verse 7. And in all of these 3 references, the term sons of God was used to spirit beings. It was not used or referenced to human beings who were simply closer to God. And therefore, in the context, the sons of God of Genesis 6 cannot mean human descendants of Sethites or human descendants from the lineage of Seth, because in other places of the Bible, this word refers to spirit beings. It refers to divine beings. The second reason that I'm leaning toward that as well is that Genesis chapter 6 verse 1 and verse 2, if you notice how we read, it contrasts when men began to multiply, okay? And then it refers to sons of God. The men, meaning there were good men as well on the earth who were multiplying and who were giving birth to, who were producing children, daughters, and then it makes a distinction between men and sons of God. And therefore, I believe that it's implying that sons of God are non-human beings. Otherwise, it would just use the same word for men and sons of God. The reason number 3 is that the view that the sons of God refers to the godly line requires an unlikely explanation that the ungodly women were more attractive than the godly women. It kind of makes it look like that all the daughters of Cain from the line of Cain were attractive, and all the daughters from the line of Seth were not attractive. And kind of, there's really just a bad explanation, I think, for that. Genesis chapter 6 verse 1 explains the pursuit of the human daughters, but not sons. If Genesis chapter 6 is about intermarriage between the godly line and the ungodly line, it's odd that only godly men were marrying ungodly women and not ungodly men marrying godly women? Were the godly women just unattractive? So why is it not, the other people getting married to the other people? Why was it only that the descendants of Seth, the males, were married the daughters? Why not the descendants of Seth, the daughters of descendants of Seth, were marrying also ungodly men? And so I think that explanation in here kind of pretty much, it's very unlikely that that was taking place. Number 4 is that humans were going along with intermarriage with spirit beings in the quest for immortality. This is very interesting. If you're reading this Genesis chapter 6, that humans, one of the reasons why these daughters were willing to have sex with spirit beings is that I believe the spirit beings were offering them immortality. Ever since man committed sin, death entered into the world, and these spirit beings were trying to promise that we will live forever. In fact, this is an old lie from the beginning all the way till now. I mean, what did Satan sold Eve with? That if you will eat, you will not die. If you will eat of the forbidden fruit, you will not die. And then it's interesting because then God says, my spirit will not strive with man forever. It's interesting, he says, for he is indeed flesh. So even though there was this connection between the divine and the human, they still could not achieve immortality, because God right away promised that their dwelling on the earth will be 120 years. God says this is not going to happen. You're not going to achieve immortality by having sexual relationship with divine beings who rebelled against God. And the meaning of 120 years could also apply that right after God pronounced that, it took 120 years, and then God wiped the earth through the flood. And so not only, they couldn't live now more than 120 years, but also within 120 years, God pronounced his judgment. Now, this applies to us today too, because a lot of people today are trying to achieve, especially the New Age movement, a lot of what technology development is, curing even a lot of the sicknesses, and people are really trying to achieve immortality. They're trying to even create these robots that they can plant or impart or transfer their consciousness to these robots, that these robots will live forever, and they will live on the earth through these robots. That's really a lot of what's happening even in our culture, and that is demonic, because God clearly stated ever since we ate of the forbidden fruit that we are gonna die, and then after that is judgment. And so there's no escape from that. Even if we find cure for cancer, we're still gonna die until we get the new resurrected bodies. And so this indicates, or we kind of can read into the text, or can kind of read in between the lines, that these spirit beings were offering immortality to fallen human beings in exchange for sexual relationship. Number 5, the context implies that Nephilims were resulting offspring of spirit beings interacting with humans. But why are the Nephilims mentioned in the same passage as the intermarriage of the sons of God and the daughters of men in Genesis chapter 6? It is unclear how these mighty men of renown came about, if it was not through the byproduct of intermarriage between sons of God and daughters of men. And so we assume and we think that that's really where they came from, through this intermarriage, since these verses are sandwiched together. Number 6, Jude supports this view. In fact, we see that the Jude likely understands that Genesis chapter 1 refers to intermarriage between spirit beings and the humans, and he gives more light into this. In Jude chapter 6, he speaks of angels who did not stay within their own positions of authority, but left their proper dwelling. And Jude seems to adopt a view from the first Enoch chapter 7, which references that Genesis chapter 6 view, and it gives deeper explanation that angels, the watchers, they left their proper domain, which God has outlined for them, and started to go into the daughters of men. See, God never intended humans to have sex with spirits. God intended for a male to be with a female, and female to be with a male. And so these are the proper boundaries for sexual relationship, not with women and spirits. And so when these sons of God, they left their proper domain, as Jude tells us in Jude 6, that they crossed these boundaries, guess what happens? That God was displeased by that. and what it resulted is these descendants, these hybrids. And so we see that Jude supports that view. Also, number 7 is Bible never rules out the sexual capabilities of spirit beings. Now, this is common objections. This is not possible because the Bible says angels do not have sexual relations. But you must understand that Genesis 6 happened on earth. And when Jesus makes a reference in Matthew 22 verse 30, it says, "For in the resurrection they neither marry nor given in marriage, but like angels," and look at this, "in heaven." So Jesus is saying that angels in heaven don't marry and have sexual relations. But there is no reference in the Bible. Bible never rules out that angels on earth cannot have sexual relations. In fact, we saw angels, their feet were washed, they were able to eat, they had human bodies. I mean, the food wasn't just going in and then just falling, on the back somewhere. I mean, it was going somewhere. So they were, washed, they interacted, if you see that through the story of Lot, to the story of Abraham. And so on the earth, these angels that crossed the boundaries that God had for them, they had sexual relations. And it doesn't contradict what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 22, because Jesus was referring to angels in heaven who do not marry or given into marriage. And number 8 is Peter confirms that God did not spare angels who sinned but cast them into Tartarus. If we read 2 Peter chapter 2 verse 4 and on, "For if God did not spare the angels who sinned but cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved for judgment, and did not spare the ancient world, but saved Noah, one of 8 people, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood on the world of the ungodly." I want you to notice the connection between angels who've sinned and Noah. There is no other reference in the Bible that connects these two events except Genesis chapter 6. Angels who have sinned. This is not talking about the rebellion of angels with Satan, because those angels, we don't see them in hell yet. We see them still with Satan. But this is referring to angels who have sinned, who are currently in the chains of darkness, who are in hell, Tartarus, who are in this, deep underground, and they are currently chained. Who are these angels? Now, Peter goes further, and he talks about Noah. And so we see the connection between these angels. We see the connection between these sons of God who rebelled against God and who crossed their boundary and started to interact with women and have sexual relationship with them. And angels are fascinated by women. The reason why is because, they don't have that in heaven. This union between, male and female that reflects the full image of God, it's very unique to them. And so they would go in and have relationship with these women. And then the Bible says that God took these angels, the watchers, the sons of God, and he put them in prison. But their offspring, these Nephilims, we believe that there's still the spirits of these Nephilims. They're still roaming around. And watch my other video where I talked about the origin of demons, where I kind of compare that demons are the disembodied spirits of the dead Nephilims, who were the byproduct of the hybrid relationship between the divine and the human. And so that's kind of my take on Genesis chapter 6. Now, I'm going to tell you right away that these ideas that I shared with you, they're not mine originally. Okay, so I want to give credit to, there's a blog in the description below that I took some of these ideas from, as well as The Unseen Realm by Dr. Michael Heiser. I would encourage you to check out his book. It goes into detail about that. I honestly just scratched the surface a little bit just to kind of create an appetite for you to study and to learn. Who they really are, and honestly doesn't make too much difference for a lot of us, because it's not a salvation issue, it's not a heaven and hell issue, but it's still very interesting topic to address, since it's in the Bible and since it's mentioned in the New Testament, in the epistles of Peter, and also in the epistle of Jude. What do you think about it? Who are the sons of God in Genesis 6? Drop that in the comment below. Let's create a discussion. We can disagree respectfully, but so don't be nasty in the comments. Drop that in the comment below. And why do you believe what you believe? Do you agree with the view that I shared? Do you have an alternative one? And share some of the views or scriptures or why you believe what you believe below. As always, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. Turn on the bell so you can be reminded each time we go live. And if you are interested in the merchandise produced by our team My wife runs a store. Below the video, you can see all the merch, including the one that I'm wearing. You can check it out. It's one of the ways you can help to support this ministry. Thank you. Until next time.